Get out!
Garrett Ashford didn't even lift his head.
I said get out! Don't touch my prized car!
The boy replied softly.
Can I take a look?
Oliver stopped. All the customers in the showroom turned around.
No one in this building can fix this Ferrari. And certainly not some stinking black thug like you.
Let me try.
The boy replied calmly. Garrett stepped closer. His lips curled into a sneer.
Don't think just because you know how to use a wrench, you belong here. You stink like a junkyard!
Laughter. Scattered. Harsh. Oliver said nothing. He looked at the Ferrari, then at Garrett.
Just one look.
Garrett burst into laughter, spilling champagne everywhere.
Stop embarrassing yourself, kid!
But what Oliver did next, no one in the room expected it, would no longer be laughing at Garrett. Chicago in late May feels like a city holding its breath. The air sits heavy between the skyscrapers. Down on Michigan Avenue, the glass towers catch the last gold of sunset and throw it back like a dare. But tonight, one building outshines them all. Ashford Velocity Motors takes up the entire corner of Michigan and East Erie. Floor-to-ceiling glass. Italian marble floors polished to a mirror. Inside, 12 of the rarest cars on the planet sit on raised platforms under soft white spotlights. Each one worth more than most people's homes. This is Garrett Ashford III's kingdom. He built it from his father's money and his grandfather's name. Ashford Velocity Motors isn't just a garage. It's a technology company. They develop custom engine management software for exotic cars. They convert million-dollar machines into hybrid prototypes that no factory would dare attempt. And tonight is the biggest night of Garrett's year. The annual charity gala. 200 guests, black ties, diamond earrings, champagne that costs more per bottle than Oliver Foster makes in a month. The centerpiece of the evening sits on a hydraulic lift in the middle of the showroom floor. A Ferrari 488 Pista, Rosso Corsa red, custom hybrid drivetrain, the only one of its kind on Earth. Garrett commissioned it himself. Value? $1.2 million. In exactly 90 minutes, Garrett is supposed to walk on stage, press a button, and fire that engine to life in front of every camera in the room. There is just one problem. The car is dead. 6 hours earlier, Teddy Winslow had started sweating. Teddy is Ashford's chief engineer. 15 years of experience, certifications covering an entire wall, a salary that could feed a small town. He had been hired specifically to build this hybrid Ferrari, to push the boundaries of what a combustion engine and electric motor could do together in one chassis. And for 6 straight hours, he could not make it start. He replaced the engine control unit. Nothing. He swapped every sensor in the ignition chain. Nothing. He ran full diagnostics. Twice. The screen came back clean every time. No fault codes. No errors. The computer said the car was perfect. But the car would not turn over. Teddy wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and stared at the engine bay like it owed him money. He had tried everything in the manual. Everything outside the manual. He called 2 colleagues. Neither had answers. The clock kept ticking. The guests were arriving, and the most expensive car in the building sat there like a sculpture. Beautiful. Lifeless. Useless. While Teddy was drowning in his own failure upstairs, Oliver Foster was in the basement. That is where the cleaning crew worked. Fluorescent lights, concrete floors, a supply closet that smelled like bleach and mildew. Nobody from the gala would ever see this hallway. That was the point. Oliver had gotten this job 3 weeks ago through a temp agency. Minimum wage. Night shift. Mop the floors. Empty the trash. Stay invisible. His grandmother Nadine had pushed him to apply. "Get inside any building where engines live," she told him. "Even if they only let you sweep the floor. You will be closer than you were yesterday." So here he was, 19 years old, no degree, no certification, no connections. Wearing gray coveralls, 2 sizes too big, pushing a mop cart past cars worth more than his entire block. But Oliver carried something nobody in this building knew about. In his back pocket, rolled tight in cracked leather, was a toolkit. 13 pieces, mismatched, old, some of them hand-modified with filed edges and custom grips. They belonged to his grandfather, Elijah Foster, and they were worth more to Oliver than every car in this showroom combined. The trouble started when Oliver heard the engine, or rather, when he heard the silence where an engine should have been. He was mopping the service corridor on the ground floor when the freight elevator opened. 2 of Teddy's assistants rolled out a diagnostic cart, arguing in low voices. One of them said something Oliver's ears locked onto instantly. "The HVIL keeps dropping. Teddy is losing his mind up there." Oliver stopped mopping. HVIL. High Voltage Interlock Loop. The safety circuit that tells a hybrid system whether the battery is properly connected. If the HVIL breaks contact, even for a fraction of a second, the car's computer kills everything. No ignition, no spark, nothing. Oliver knew this system. He knew it the way a pianist knows a chord by ear. He set down his mop. He walked toward the showroom entrance. He did not belong there, he knew that. But something pulled him forward, the same instinct that used to drag him across his grandfather's garage toward whatever was broken. He stepped through the glass doors into the showroom. The Ferrari sat on the lift, hood open, surrounded by cables and diagnostic screens. Teddy was underneath, flashlight clenched in his teeth. 3 assistants hovered around him. None of them noticed Oliver. But Garrett did. Garrett was standing by the bar, phone in one hand, fury carved into his face. He had just finished shouting at a parts supplier. He turned and saw a black kid in oil-stained coveralls walking toward his $1 million car. That is when the first words came. "Get out!" And everything that followed, every insult, every laugh, every sneer, landed on Oliver like stones thrown at close range. But Garrett's mouth was only the beginning. His son made sure of that. Blaine Ashford, 25, stood 3 feet behind his father with his phone raised high, recording, live streaming to 8,000 followers. He narrated like a sportscaster calling a circus act. "Ladies and gentlemen, the janitor thinks he is a mechanic. Look at this guy. Look at his shoes. Are those held together with tape?" The camera zoomed in on Oliver's boots. The left sole was separating at the toe. Oliver had glued it twice this week. Comments flooded in. Laughing emojis, clown faces. Someone typed, "Send him back to the junkyard where he belongs." Blaine read it out loud, slowly, savoring every word. The guests laughed again, louder this time. A few looked uncomfortable, but nobody spoke up. Nobody stepped between Oliver and the cruelty. In rooms like this, silence is a vote. And the room voted to look away. Security arrived. 2 men, both a head taller than Oliver. They flanked him without a word and walked him toward the service hallway. Oliver did not resist. He kept his eyes forward, his jaw tight, his hands perfectly still at his sides. But just before the door closed behind him, one person in the showroom caught his eye: Derek Sullivan. Derek was the head mechanic, the guy who actually turned wrenches, while Teddy managed spreadsheets and collected praise. He had been with Ashford for 8 years. He kept his head down, did clean work, and never got involved in politics. But right now, Derek was staring at Oliver. Not with pity, not with amusement, with recognition. Because 5 minutes ago, while everyone else was laughing, Derek had heard what Oliver muttered under his breath when he first laid eyes on the car. It is not the ECU. 3 words, barely a whisper, swallowed by the noise of the room. But Derek caught them. And Derek knew. Anyone who could rule out the ECU from 10 feet away, without running a single test, without touching a single wire, was not guessing. That was diagnosis. Real diagnosis. The kind that only comes from years of pressing your ear against metal and listening to what machines are trying to tell you. Derek set down his wrench. He wiped his hands on his shop rag, and he followed Oliver into the hallway. The door swung shut behind them. The laughter faded to a muffle. The hallway was quiet now. Just the buzz of fluorescent tubes and the low hum of ventilation pushing stale air through the building. Derek looked at Oliver, straight in the eyes. "What do you think is wrong with it?" Oliver did not hesitate. Not for a breath. Not for a blink. "The HVIL circuit is dropping contact. There is a grounding fault in the custom harness, probably a connector pin that is seated but not locked. It makes contact just long enough to clear the fault code, then loses it again on the next power cycle. That is why the diagnostics come back clean every time. The car is not broken. It is lying to the computer." Derek felt the hair stand up on both arms. He had been a mechanic for 20 years. He had trained under master technicians. He had seen raw talent walk through the door before, young kids with fast hands and good eyes. But this was not talent. This was something else entirely. This was the kind of instinct he had only ever heard described by one person in his life. A legendary engineer named Carolyn Prescott. The woman who once ran Ferrari's engine program in Maranello. The woman whose hands had touched more championship engines than anyone alive. And by some twist of fate, she was upstairs right now, standing in the gala crowd, holding a glass of champagne, completely unaware that the most remarkable person at this event was not wearing a tuxedo. He was standing in a service hallway, next to a mop cart, with a tool roll in his back pocket that smelled like rust and memories. To understand what Oliver could do, you have to understand where it came from. And where it came from was a garage, with no sign, no license, and no floor. Just packed dirt and a roof that leaked when it rained. Elijah Foster built that garage himself, south side of Chicago, behind a 2-bedroom house with vinyl siding peeling off in strips. He built it from wood pallets, scrap metal, and a door he pulled off a condemned school bus. Elijah was a Korean War veteran. He came home in 1953 with a Purple Heart, 2 missing fingers on his left hand, and a skill that the United States military taught him, but the United States economy refused to pay him for. He could fix anything with an engine. Trucks, tractors, generators, diesel rigs with 6 blown cylinders and a cracked block. Did not matter. Elijah would lay his hands on it, close his eyes, and listen. Then he would open his toolbox and go to work. But no dealership in Chicago would hire a black mechanic in the 1950s. Not on the north side. Not in the suburbs. Not anywhere a white customer might see his face behind the counter. So Elijah built his own shop. Word of mouth only, cash only. No sign needed. The neighborhood knew. If it was broken, you brought it to Elijah. If Elijah could not fix it, nobody could. Oliver was 8 years old the first time he stepped into that garage. He remembers the smell, motor oil and rust, and the faint sweetness of old gasoline soaked into dirt. He remembers the light, gold and dusty, cutting through cracks in the wooden walls. And he remembers the sound of his grandfather's ratchet. Click, 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 steady as a heartbeat. Elijah did not teach Oliver with textbooks. He taught him with his hands. "Close your eyes," he would say. "Now tell me, what is this engine trying to tell you?" Oliver would press his palms flat against the valve cover. He would feel the vibration, the rhythm, the tiny interruptions that meant something was loose or worn or misaligned by a fraction of a millimeter. By age 10, Oliver could diagnose a misfire by touch alone. By 12, he could rebuild a carburetor blindfolded. By 14, he and Elijah were halfway through restoring a 1969 Ford Mustang they had pulled from a scrapyard for $200. That Mustang was their cathedral. Every bolt was a prayer. Every evening in that garage was a sermon without words. Then Elijah got sick. It happened fast. Pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed in October. Gone by February. Oliver was 15 years old. He stood at the funeral in a borrowed suit that did not fit and shoes that pinched his feet, and he did not cry. Not because he was strong, because he was empty. The last thing Elijah ever said to him was in that garage. The old man was sitting on an overturned milk crate, too weak to stand, watching Oliver torque a head gasket on the Mustang. "Boy, listen to me. The world is going to look at you and decide what you are before you say a single word. That is their problem, not yours. Never tell them what you can do. Show them. Metal does not care what color your hands are." Oliver took those words and stitched them into his chest like a second heartbeat. After Elijah died, everything crumbled. Oliver's grandmother, Nadine, raised him alone. She worked 2 jobs, janitorial at a hospital before dawn, janitorial at an office building after dark. The apartment was small. The heat cut out in winter. Dinner was often rice and whatever vegetables were on sale. Oliver got expelled from high school at 16. Not for drugs, not for theft. For throwing a punch at a senior who was slamming a freshman's head into a locker. The school did not care about context. They cared about paperwork. Oliver was out. He got his GED, applied to trade schools, rejected. Applied to apprenticeship programs, rejected. Applied to a community college automotive program, waitlisted, then rejected. Every door closed, some of them slammed. But every night, Oliver went to his grandfather's garage. Alone now, just him and the Mustang and the tool roll and the smell of oil. He taught himself. Library books on hybrid drivetrains, YouTube teardown videos, open-source engineering forums where people shared schematics for free. At 16, he pulled a wrecked electric car from a junkyard and reverse-engineered its entire battery management system on the garage floor. Nobody saw it. Nobody graded it. Nobody clapped. The neighborhood knew, though. Word spread the same way it had for Elijah. If it is broken, bring it to Oliver. He fixed a church van's alternator for free. He rebuilt a neighbor's wheelchair motor in an afternoon. He got a single mother's car running the night before her first day at a new job. He never charged more than parts cost. Sometimes not even that. His motto, inherited from Elijah, reshaped by his own scars, was simple. Hands don't lie. The work speaks. He did not know it yet. But tonight, in the most unlikely place in Chicago, the work was about to speak louder than it ever had. Derek Sullivan had worked at Ashford Velocity Motors for 8 years. In that time, he had learned one rule above all others. Do not make waves. Keep your head down, do your job, let the men in suits take the credit. Collect your check, go home. That was the deal. That was how you survived in Garrett Ashford's world. But tonight, standing in that dim hallway, looking at a 19-year-old kid who had just described a phantom fault with more precision than a senior engineer, Derek broke his own rule. He walked back into the showroom, straight to Garrett. Give the kid 30 minutes. Garrett turned slowly, the kind of slow that means danger. Excuse me? 30 minutes, Derek said again. His voice was steady, but his hands were not. Teddy has been on it for 6 hours. The gala starts in less than 90 minutes. We have nothing to lose. Garrett stared at Derek like he was watching an insect crawl across his dinner plate. You want me to let the janitor touch a $1.2 million car in front of my guests, on camera. I want you to let someone who might actually know what is wrong with it take a look. The room went quiet. Teddy Winslow, still crouched by the Ferrari with grease on his collar, looked up. His face was red. His eyes were hollow. 6 hours of failure had drained every ounce of confidence from his body. He stared at Derek for a long moment. Then he nodded. Let him try, Teddy said quietly. I am out of ideas. Garrett looked at Teddy, then at Derek, then at the dead Ferrari sitting under $1 million worth of lighting. He checked his watch. 82 minutes until showtime. A slow smile spread across his face, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had just found a new way to entertain his guests. Fine, Garrett said. He raised his voice so the entire room could hear. Bring the janitor back. Put him on the clock. 30 minutes. He paused, took a sip of champagne. If he cannot show me something real in 30 minutes, he is fired. And Sullivan, you are right behind him. Then Garrett turned to his guests, arms wide, voice booming. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special show for you tonight. Our cleaning boy thinks he can fix what my best engineers could not. Let us see how long he lasts. Applause, laughter, phones came out. Blaine Ashford was already live streaming again, his grin wide and cruel. The crowd formed a half circle around the Ferrari. 200 people, tuxedos and gowns. The air smelled like expensive perfume and cold judgment. Security brought Oliver back through the service door. He walked into the showroom and stopped. The lights hit him. The phones pointed at him. 200 pairs of eyes measured him from head to toe and found him lacking. Oliver did not look at the crowd. He looked at the car. He walked toward the Ferrari the way a surgeon walks toward an operating table. No hesitation, no showmanship, just focus. He stopped at the front quarter panel. He did not reach for a tool. He did not open a diagnostic laptop. He did something no one in the room expected. He knelt down, placed his right hand flat against the body of the car, closed his eyes. Silence. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15. Someone in the crowd whispered, "What is he doing?" Blaine narrated into his phone. He is praying to it. This is priceless. More laughter, but quieter now, because something about the way Oliver held his hand against that car, something about the stillness of his body, the tilt of his head, the way his fingers spread across the metal like he was reading Braille, made the laughter feel wrong. Then Oliver opened his eyes. He reached into his back pocket and unrolled the leather toolkit on the floor beside the car. 13 tools, old, scratched, some wrapped in electrical tape. Blaine zoomed in. "Are you kidding me? Those belong in a museum." But one person in that room was not laughing. Carolyn Prescott stood near the back wall, champagne glass frozen halfway to her lips. She had not moved in 30 seconds. Her eyes were locked on Oliver's hands. Carolyn Prescott, 63 years old, retired chief engineer from Ferrari's powertrain division in Maranello, Italy, one of the first women to ever hold that title. She had built engines that won championships. She had trained engineers who now ran factories. She was a legend, and she was here tonight as Garrett's honored guest. But right now, Garrett did not exist to her. Because what Oliver just did, placing his palm flat against the chassis, reading the car through vibration and resonance, was a technique she had not seen in 20 years. The old masters in Maranello used to do it, before computers, before digital diagnostics, back when understanding a machine meant becoming part of it. She had never seen anyone under 60 use that method, and she had certainly never seen it from a teenager in a janitor's uniform on a showroom floor in Chicago. Carolyn set her glass down on the nearest table. She moved through the crowd without a word. People stepped aside for her. They knew her name, her reputation. She positioned herself at the edge of the half circle, directly in Oliver's line of sight. Oliver looked up. Their eyes met. He did not know who she was, but she gave him one small nod, barely visible, the kind of nod that says, "I see you. Keep going." That nod was enough. Garrett, feeding off the energy of his own cruelty, raised the stakes even higher. He stepped forward and addressed the crowd again. "Tell you what, I am a sporting man. If this kid can identify the fault, just tell me what is wrong. I will donate $50,000 to the charity tonight." He grinned. "But if he is wrong, and he will be, security removes him for good, and I am sure the internet will handle the rest." He looked at Blaine. Blaine gave a thumbs up. Still recording. Always recording. The crowd murmured. The bet was set. The cameras were rolling. 200 witnesses, a $1 million car, a 19-year-old janitor with a dead grandfather's tools. Oliver exhaled, slow, controlled. He stood up and opened the engine bay. His hands moved to the wiring harness with a precision that silenced the first row of onlookers. Even Blaine's commentary stuttered for a moment. Something was shifting in the room. Nobody could name it yet, but the air felt different, heavier, like the seconds before lightning strikes. Oliver's hands moved through the engine bay the way a blind man's fingers move across a familiar face. No hesitation, no searching. Every touch had a reason. The crowd watched. Some held their breath without realizing it. He started at the top of the hybrid wiring harness, the custom-built nervous system connecting the Ferrari's twin-turbo V8 to the prototype electric motor Teddy's team had grafted onto it. This harness was not factory. It was handmade, unique to this one car. And somewhere inside its web of wires and connectors, something was hiding. Oliver traced the harness with his fingertips, branch by branch, connector by connector. His fingers moved the way a doctor's fingers move during an examination, pressing, pausing, reading what the surface could not say. His hand stopped. A junction box mounted low on the firewall, a small black connector plug, no bigger than a thumb drive. Oliver pressed his thumb against it, then pulled it free. He held it up to the light, turned it slowly. The crowd leaned in but could not see what he was looking at. To them, it was just plastic with tiny metal pins inside. But Oliver's face changed. Not a smile, not surprise. The look of a man who already knew the answer and just found the proof. "Here," he said. His voice was calm, not loud, but every person in that half-circle heard it because the room had gone so quiet you could hear the ventilation breathing above them. He pointed to one pin inside the connector, third from the left. "This is your HVIL connector, high voltage interlock loop, the safety circuit that tells the computer whether the hybrid battery is safely connected. If this circuit breaks, even for 8 milliseconds, the computer kills the entire ignition sequence. No spark, no start, nothing." He tilted the connector so Teddy could see. "This pin is seated. It looks correct, but it is not locked. Feel it." Teddy pressed the pin with his fingertip. It moved. Barely. A tiny wobble you would never catch with your eyes, only by touch. Teddy's hand froze. "Every time the system powers up," Oliver continued, "this pin makes contact. Diagnostics run clean, 0 fault codes. But on the next cycle, vibration shifts it just enough to break contact. The HVIL drops. The computer kills ignition. Then the pin settles back. Fault erases itself. The loop starts over." He looked at Teddy. "Your car is not broken. It is betraying you, faster than your software can catch." Dead silence, the kind that feels heavier than noise. Teddy's face lost all color. He had checked that connector, twice. But he tested it visually, digitally, by the book. He never pressed the pin with his finger. It never crossed his mind that something could look perfect on every screen and still be failing at the speed of milliseconds. 6 hours chasing a ghost. A 19-year-old janitor found it in 5 minutes with his bare hands. Derek Sullivan exhaled so hard his shoulders dropped. He pressed his fist against his mouth. He had been right. The kid was the real thing. Garrett said nothing. His champagne glass hung forgotten. For the first time all evening, his mouth was closed. Something behind his eyes was starting to crack. But Oliver was not finished. He reached into the leather tool roll and picked up a single instrument. A thin, angled piece of steel with a hooked tip, handmade. Elijah Foster had shaped it from a dental pick 3 decades ago, filing the tip to a precise bend for reaching into connectors where factory tools could not go. Oliver inserted the pick into the housing. One careful motion, less than a quarter turn of his wrist. The pin clicked into its locked position. A tiny sound, but in that silent room, it rang out like a bell. Then Oliver did something nobody expected. He reached into his chest pocket and pulled out a short length of wire. 6 inches, 12 gauge, tinned copper. He always carried spare wire, had since he was 12. Elijah taught him that. A mechanic without spare wire is a doctor without bandages. Oliver stripped both ends with his teeth, slid beneath the car, found a clean grounding point on the chassis rail, bonded the wire between the chassis and the HVIL connector housing. His hands worked in the tight space with the ease that only comes from years of lying under cars on cinder blocks and packed dirt, working by flashlight and feel. Teddy crouched down and frowned. "What are you doing? The pin is fixed." "Supplemental ground strap," Oliver said without looking up. "Your custom harness has one ground path for the interlock circuit. One. Single point of failure. Next time this car hits rough pavement or sits overnight in a cold garage, thermal cycling could loosen that pin again. This strap gives the circuit a second path. If the primary drops, the secondary catches it. The fault never returns." He tightened the connection, checked it twice, slid out, and stood up. Teddy stared at the ground strap, then at Oliver. His mouth opened, and nothing came out. Because what this kid had done was not a repair. It was an engineering improvement. He had not only found the disease, he had vaccinated the patient against ever catching it again. With a dental pick and 6 inches of wire. From the back of the crowd, a voice cut through the silence. "What gauge wire?" Every head turned. Carolyn Prescott stepped forward. The crowd parted without being asked. They knew her name. When Carolyn Prescott spoke in a room full of car people, you listened. She was not looking at the car. She was looking at Oliver. He met her eyes. He did not know who she was. He did not know her name or her title, or that her hands had touched more championship engines than almost anyone alive. He only saw a woman who asked the right question. 12 gauge, he said. Tinned copper. Anything thinner will not handle the interlock current if the primary path drops under load. Carolyn held his gaze. Then she nodded. Slowly. The kind of nod a master gives when a student answers a question most professionals get wrong. 12 gauge, tinned copper, Maranello specification, factory standard for Ferrari's own HVIL redundancy protocols. Buried in a technical document most certified mechanics never read. Oliver learned it from a water-stained library book on a bottom shelf of the Chicago Public Library. Checked out exactly twice before him. The crowd felt it. The shift moved through the room like a change in temperature. Phones still out, still recording, but no one laughing. No one smirking. People leaning forward. A woman pressed her hand over her mouth. A man near the bar shook his head. Not disbelief, but the quiet recognition that comes when you witness something you will never forget. Now came the moment. Oliver closed the engine bay. Gently, the way you close a book you love. He stepped back and faced Garrett Ashford. No gloat, no smirk, no speech. He looked at Garrett with steady, unbroken eyes and said 4 words. "Try it now, sir." Garrett did not move. 3 full seconds. The most powerful man in the room stood still, and for once in his life, he had nothing to say. Then he looked at Teddy. A short jerk of the chin. Teddy walked to the driver's side. His hands trembled. He pressed the start button. The Ferrari 488 Pista roared to life. Not a stutter, not a cough. A full, thundering, perfect V8 ignition that shook the champagne flutes on every table. The sound filled the room the way a church organ fills a cathedral. Enormous, alive, undeniable. The crowd erupted. Not polite applause, a roar, startled and raw. People leapt from seats. Someone whistled. 200 phones captured the moment from 200 angles, and not a single one was laughing. But Oliver did not hear any of it, because Carolyn Prescott was walking toward him, through the crowd, past Blaine and his dead phone screen, past Garrett and his empty glass. She stopped in front of Oliver and extended her hand. He took it. "I have worked with engineers in Maranello," she said, loud enough for the room. "In Stuttgart, in Detroit. That diagnosis was as clean as any I have seen in my career." She paused. "Where did you train?" For the first time tonight, something broke through the wall Oliver had built around himself. Not pride, not triumph. Something older. Something that looked like a boy, standing in a dirt floor garage, watching scarred hands teach him that he mattered. "My grandfather's garage," he said. "South Side." The room fell silent. Not the silence of mockery, not the silence of judgment, the silence of shame. And somewhere across the city, in a hospital basement that smelled like floor wax and recycled air, a 61-year-old woman named Nadine Coleman was mopping a corridor alone. Her knees ached. Her hands were cracked from chemicals. She had no idea that right now, in a room full of millionaires, her grandson was standing taller than any person in the building. The applause was still echoing when Carolyn Prescott raised her hand. The room quieted. When she spoke, her voice carried the calm authority of someone who had spent decades being the only person in the room who mattered. "I would like to run a full diagnostic validation, right now, on camera, in front of everyone." She looked at Garrett, not asking, informing. Garrett's jaw tightened. He glanced at the crowd, 200 faces staring back, phones still recording. Rachel Donovan, the automotive journalist from Motor Authority, had moved to the front row with a notebook open and a recorder running. Garrett was trapped inside his own spectacle. Refusing would look worse than agreeing. "Go ahead," he said. The words came out flat. Teddy wheeled over a professional-grade diagnostic terminal, the kind that reads every sensor, every module, every line of data the car's computer has ever recorded. Carolyn plugged it in herself. The screen lit up. Numbers cascaded. The system scanned every circuit, every parameter, every fault history in the Ferrari's brain. The result came back in 45 seconds. 0 active faults. 0 pending faults. 0 stored faults. Every system passed. The hybrid drivetrain was running in perfect harmony. Oliver's 3-step fix, diagnosis, pin reseat, ground strap, had resolved the problem completely. But Carolyn was not done. She navigated to the car's historical data log. 6 hours of records. Every attempt by every engineer who had touched the car that day. She projected it onto the showroom's presentation screen so the entire room could see. The pattern was damning. 17 ignition attempts. 17 HVIL faults, each one appearing for a fraction of a second, then vanishing. The same ghost, over and over, invisible to anyone who did not know exactly where to look. Every certified technician in Garrett's building had missed it. Oliver caught it in under 5 minutes without a computer. Then Carolyn scrolled deeper, and the room shifted again. 2 gaps in the log, 2 places where the data simply stopped and restarted. Timestamps missing, records erased. Carolyn looked at Teddy. "You reset the system logs. Twice." It was not a question. Teddy opened his mouth, closed it. His face went from pale to gray, the kind of gray that means a man knows his career just ended in front of 200 witnesses. He had wiped the logs, not to fix anything, to hide how many times he had failed, to make it look like he had only attempted a few repairs instead of 17, to protect his reputation in front of Garrett, in front of the guests, in front of the cameras. It was not just incompetence. It was a cover-up, a falsification of service records on a vehicle with a high-voltage hybrid system, the kind of violation that gets certifications revoked. Teddy said nothing. He stepped back from the car. He did not look at anyone. Garrett Ashford watched the screen. His face was stone, but the cracks were everywhere now. The man who had pointed at Oliver and called him a stinking thug was standing in the ruins of his own evening. His chief engineer was a fraud. His charity gala had become a courtroom, and the janitor he tried to humiliate was the only person in the building who had told the truth. The viral clip Blaine had posted earlier was still live, but the comments had flipped completely. Thousands of people were watching. The clown emojis were gone. In their place, outrage at Garrett, praise for Oliver, and a hashtag that was climbing faster than Blaine could delete his replies. Garrett straightened his tie, forced a thin smile, addressed the crowd the way a politician addresses a scandal, with performance instead of honesty. "Well, I said I would donate $50,000 if he got it right. A deal is a deal." Polite murmurs, a few claps, but the warmth was gone from the room. Everyone could feel it. The applause was for Oliver. The silence was for Garrett. Then Garrett leaned toward an aide and said, quietly, but not quietly enough, "Get him out of here when this is over." Rachel Donovan heard it. She wrote it down. Carolyn Prescott heard it too. She was still standing next to Oliver, and the look she gave Garrett could have cut glass. Oliver stood in the center of the showroom. The Ferrari idled behind him, its engine humming a low, perfect note. The red paint caught the overhead lights and threw soft reflections across the marble floor. The leather tool roll lay open at his feet. 13 mismatched tools on cracked leather, worth nothing to anyone in this room except the one person who mattered. Oliver looked down at his hands, grease in the lines of his palms, a small cut on his left thumb he did not remember getting. These hands, the hands Garrett told to pick up a mop. And somewhere, deep in his chest, beneath the noise and the lights and the stairs, he heard his grandfather's voice, quiet, steady, like a ratchet clicking in a still garage. The work speaks. Carolyn Prescott did not wait until the gala was over. She did not schedule a meeting. She did not pass the request through Garrett's office. She walked Oliver to a quiet corner of the showroom, away from the cameras and the noise, and made her offer standing up. "I want you in my shop, Monday morning. Paid apprenticeship, full tuition sponsorship for an engineering certification program. You work with me, you learn from me, and when you are ready, I will make sure every door that was ever closed to you opens from the inside." Oliver stared at her. He did not speak for a long time, not because he did not have words, because he had too many. Why? He finally asked.
Because I have spent 40 years in this industry,
Carolyn said, and I can count on one hand the number of people I have seen do what you just did. I am not going to watch you walk out of this building and disappear. Before the night was over, Rachel Donovan found Oliver near the service hallway. She told him she was writing the story, whether he cooperated or not. But she wanted his words. Oliver gave her one quote. I did not come here to prove anything. I came here to work. The car needed help. That is it. Rachel closed her notebook. She already knew that quote would lead her article. Within 48 hours, Carolyn's offer was formalized in writing. But it did not stop there. 2 other automotive engineering firms, one in Detroit, one in Charlotte, reached out independently after seeing the viral footage. They wanted Oliver. For the first time in 19 years, Oliver Foster had options. That night, alone in his grandmother's kitchen, Oliver called Nadine at work. She picked up on the 4th ring, out of breath, mop handle still in her hand. He told her everything. The car, the crowd, the woman from Ferrari, the offer. Nadine was silent for a long time. So long that Oliver thought the call had dropped. Then she spoke. Her voice cracked on every word. Your grandfather always said you would end up somewhere they could not ignore you. She cried. He cried. Neither one hung up for a very long time. Rachel Donovan's article dropped 72 hours later. It did not lead with Oliver's name. It led with Garrett's. The headline was simple. The damage was not. The article documented everything. The public insults, captured word for word from Blaine's own live stream. The racial language. The deliberate humiliation of a teenager in front of 200 guests. The culture of elitism at Ashford Velocity Motors that treated people like Oliver as invisible until they became entertainment. Rachel had receipts, video, audio, timestamps, witness statements from 3 guests who asked to remain anonymous but confirmed every detail. The article spread the way fires spread in dry wind. Automotive forums picked it up first, then mainstream outlets. Then social media turned it into a storm. Ashford Velocity Motors' largest corporate sponsor, a luxury watchmaker that had partnered with the gala for 5 consecutive years, issued a statement within 24 hours. They were ending their partnership effective immediately. 2 more sponsors followed by the end of the week. A 4th sent a private letter that leaked anyway. Garrett's board of directors held an emergency session. They did not fire him. He owned too much of the company for that. But they released a formal statement distancing the organization from his personal conduct. They used words like not reflective of our values and under internal review. The kind of language that sounds like support, but reads like a warning. Garrett was quietly removed from the speaker lineup at 3 upcoming industry conferences. His PR team advised him to step back from all public-facing roles for the foreseeable future. No interviews, no panels, no galas. The man who made Oliver invisible was now trying to become invisible himself. And the irony was perfect. Because every camera at that gala, every phone, every live stream, every recording had been Garrett's idea. He had built the stage. He had invited the audience. He had turned on the lights. He never imagined the show would belong to someone else. Blaine Ashford learned that lesson even harder. His live stream, the one he launched to mock a janitor's shoes and broken tools, became the single most important piece of evidence against his own father. Every clip, every caption, every comment he read out loud with a grin on his face, all of it archived, all of it shared, all of it permanent. The comment section that once filled with clown emojis now filled with something else entirely. Thousands of messages, not for Blaine, for Oliver. The hashtag reached trending in under 12 hours. Blaine deleted every social media account he owned. His father quietly removed him from all operational roles at Ashford Velocity Motors. At 25 years old, Blaine Ashford became a ghost in his own family's company. Teddy Winslow's fall was quieter, but no less complete. The diagnostic logs Carolyn pulled told a story Teddy could not deny. 2 deliberate system resets. 2 attempts to erase his own failure from the record. Falsifying service documentation on a high-voltage hybrid vehicle was not just a fireable offense. It was a violation of professional engineering standards. His ASE certification was placed under formal review. His termination letter arrived before the end of the week. No lawsuit, no scandal. Just a man who chose to hide the truth and lost everything because of it. 3 men, 3 consequences, each one earned, each one built from their own choices, their own words, their own hands. Garrett built the theater. Blaine rolled the cameras. Teddy erased the evidence. And Oliver, the boy they laughed at, wrote the only story anyone would remember. 6 months later, Oliver finished restoring his grandfather's 1969 Mustang. He drives it to Carolyn Prescott's shop every morning. The leather tool roll rides in the passenger seat. One evening, working late, Oliver finishes a repair and wipes his hands on a shop rag. He looks down at them. The same hands Garrett Ashford told to pick up a mop. He smiles. Not a big smile, a quiet one. The kind that says, "I always knew." Talent does not wait for permission. It does not need a title, a degree, or an invitation. It just needs one chance to touch the work. And the work speaks. Yo, real talk. Don't ever let someone's disrespect put a ceiling on what you can do. Like, nah, they laugh? Cool, let them. Your talent doesn't shrink just because they can't see it. Stay locked in, keep moving, keep building, and let the work shut every mouth in the room. Free. Yo, real talk. Don't ever let someone's disrespect put a ceiling on what you can do. Like, nah, they laugh? Cool, let them. Your talent doesn't shrink just because they can't see it. Stay locked in, keep moving, keep building, and let the work shut every mouth in the room. Father.